Welcome to the coffee talk with salty Vixen's flair. Dive into deep thoughts, no topics to air.
Welcome to Salty Vixen's Coffee Talk, a place where I talk about what is on a Salty Vixen's mind. I'm an author, I'm a musician, and a mother, and I am the founder of Salty Vixen brand. Today's episode is titled, Am I Holding a Grudge, or is it actually trauma that I'm experiencing? And I feel like that's an important episode because in life we all experience trauma. The problem is if it's not resolved and it turns to PTSD, or in my case, complex PTSD, when the trauma triggers happen, it's like you're stuck in a past, freeze framed, and you're holding on to that moment that people from the outside looking in are like, oh my God, Salty Vixen. Oh my goodness, oy vey, stop holding on to that grudge, like let the past go. And you hear that a lot. Move on, another phrase you hear. Let it go, like the Frozen song. That's the way I perceive it. The problem is with trauma, it's not like we are thinking about it 24/7. It's something that triggers the trauma. And part of it is like almost like you had a wound that on the surface it healed, but the deep root of it was never healed. It's still very much so damaged. Now, my trauma has a long history centered around it. And for those tuning in, I may sound like a broken record, but there's a reason why the trauma is the way it is, why I am Salty Vixen. And I've talked about it in previous podcast episodes that I was in a sexing gate relationship or a sexing affair. And it was with someone who I cared about very deeply. He's someone I liked. We reconnected on a social media platform many years ago. Actually, it was March of 2017. And the beginning conversation was talking about a situation that he did to me my junior year of band camp. Now, what happened was I joined drumline. I got to play the cymbals. I was not very popular in band at all. And I joined drumline because, frankly, I was tired of bass drums running into me my first 2 years of high school. I played flute in marching band, then in marching clarinet, and every year I was like a magnet for the bass drum. So I'm like, okay, I'll join drumline. My crush had graduated. I'm like, I don't want him to think I joined because of him. I'm good. And he came back to help out. And I remembered when he came back, he ignored me before band camp. And I still remember when the other cymbal player and I came with the whole drum line and we're doing the cadences, and he puts the stick up in the air. His feet point towards me. I mean, you could tell him he was just angry. You're like, oh crap, the wrath is coming. Everyone knew about the wrath. And he turned around and he says, how many times have I told you how to play this? You're playing it wrong. And the thing was, I wasn't playing it wrong. My cymbal friend was playing it wrong, and I was following her because I did not want her to get yelled at by him. I'm like, I can take it. Actually, I couldn't, but I didn't understand why he was yelling at me instead of helping us. And I remember that day when the practice ended, I asked his best friend at the time, like, does he hate me? Like, why is he mad at me? And the guy smiled. He goes, nah, he doesn't hate you. Trust me. I know he doesn't hate you. I was like, oh, does he actually like me? You know, my mind was thinking that. But the guy's like, go talk to him. You know what? I promise you he'll help you. And I came outside to talk to him, and he was helping the other cymbal player. And she's like, hey, Salty is there. Are you going to help her? And he's like, no, she can help herself. And I was like, oh, what the hell? And then I walked to my car, and he walked out with his best friend and looking right at me. Both of them were. And I'm mortified because I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Am I not wanted? Because these were, you know, my thoughts at the time. And then band camp rolled around, and I remember that it was midweek, rookie day, I think it was. And he was just totally ignoring me the whole week that far up to that point. And I just had it. I was tired. I was thirsty. I was holding back tears because he would walk past me and talk to the other cymbal player. He talked to snare drums. He talked to bass drums. Everyone saw how he was treating me. He was acting like I did not exist. And so I remember telling the snare drummer, like, I feel like I'm about to pass out. I wasn't. Again, I was trying to hold back tears. But I did not want to see as a weak person who's going to cry over this guy I once liked. And so the guy's like, go get water. And I walked off the field, And I sat down with the pit section, and his best friend says a joke, and I'm laughing. Then I'm hearing the dude going, "Where is she? Where's Salty Vixen?" And everyone's like, "She's sitting there with your friend." I did not give her permission. I shit you not. He said that. And also it was 102 members of marching band. Everyone got super quiet, I remember. And he turns around and slowly takes his sunglasses off. His bestie is laughing. He's like, "Oh, he mad?" I'm like, "I don't care. I'm thirsty. I don't need to ask for permission from him." And but he took his sunglasses off and he says, "I see 11." No, first he goes, "Salty." Well, my actual name, Salty. And I look at him and I pretend to ignore him because, I gave him a little smug look. I'm like, "Oh, okay, you're going to give me the wrath? Okay, I'm ready." I really wasn't. And he said, "I see you laughing. Get your butt back on the field right now. You hear me?" Like, these were his words. Now you're thinking, why do I remember it from a long time ago? This is what trauma is. You remember something. The wrath is something I held on to for a long time. I got back on the field and he was ripping at me and he goes, "God, geez, why didn't you ask? Geez." And then of course we carried on, and then we get back in formation and march back to the band camp, where the food hall was. I can't remember right now the names. And as we're marching back, I was crying the entire time, but I was being a little bit theatrical because from what I recall the previous year, he would tell me how much he hated when people were crying. And I remember we were at this state fair thing, and my friend at the time said something embarrassing, and of course he heard, and I remember tapping her lightly and she falls. I felt so bad, but she said she was feeling dizzy. So I think it was sort of like, even though I touched her lightly on the shoulder because like, "Don't say that. Don't be embarrassing." She lost her balance. But I blame myself for it because, I'm an empath. I don't want to hurt people. And even though, again, she lost her balance, it still affected me. And we're on the school bus and I'm crying. And he's like, "Get her, stop crying. I can't stand people crying." He came up to me. He taps on my shoulder roughly. And he said, "Salty, stop crying. You don't need to cry." I'm like, "But I heard her. And he said, "Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to tell you this to stop crying, but I beg of you. I'm just going to let you know she's not your friend. She'll never be your friend. She's not a good friend." Ironically, he predicted that years later because her and I fell out many years later after I got back from Europe. So yeah, he predicted that. Anyway, so going back to the band camp thing, we're marching back and I'm crying. And of course, his friends are like, "You go tell her you're sorry. Which it was not cool. That was an awful thing." And he's like, I'm not going to apologize. She can quit the crying. I'm not apologizing." And then, of course, we had the fire pit later on, and I'm standing next to some of my friends who are in the drumline, and I'm right near him. And again, his best friend says, "Dude, you need to apologize to her." And he had tears swelling up in his eyes, and he looks at me and says, "No, I'm not going to apologize. If she doesn't want to be here, she should quit. And I hate her." Those words haunted me. And when band camp ended, of course, he leaves, goes to college, and I'm flipping out because really I didn't have any friends, and he's the only one I could be comfortable around, if that makes sense. Because I've noticed since I was 6 and he was in 8th grade, and my crush was over with at this point, by the way. It was done like months prior to that. So I was kind of hurt. Like, why do you hate me? What did I do to you? And so, yeah, I lived through many, many years thinking this man hated me. Now, when we reconnected, he said, "I never hated you. I always liked you." And he said, "I couldn't believe you held on to that for a long time." Like, I didn't hold on to it, but I held on to aspects of it. Like, because of him telling me that, it made me work harder. Now you're thinking, well, why? Why him? Because my friends never told me, "Work hard. We're proud of you." Coming from him meant so much to me. Not because he was my crush at one point, because I existed with him. I've talked about that in previous podcasts. And, but years later, I found out a lot of this was trauma response, not from him. When he gave me the wrath, by the way, at band camp, the way I reacted, even though it was a bit theatrical and crying, but I was incredibly hurt. Not because of the wrath from him. Yeah, it was hurtful, but it was deeper rooted. And it took me a long time to remember that, probably after band camp, was what his brother did to me in 8th grade. Now I've talked about this in the past. Well, this is where Salty Vixen comes from. Remember, the name is like a protection thing for me. Because when I feel the fight or flight thing coming on or complex PTSD, I go back to that time and I think, well, that dude from 8th grade said I was worthless, I'm ugly, he wanted me to die, he, told people not to talk to me, all because of a stupid rumor that someone told him instead of him coming to me, and he treated me like shit for rest of 8th grade. I feel like I had zero friends because of him. My own friends didn't protect me. The only person that protected me was Mr. J. And I nearly ended my life because of this dude. I mean, it was bad. I never received bullying like bad. I was made fun of a lot from peers, but from level bullying he did, I nearly took my life because of him. He never knew that. And, I'm talking about now as an adult, but this is, again, I at least in my opinion, was probably the worst trauma experience I ever had. And this is the source of complex PTSD. And I don't think about it on a daily basis, but certain things would trigger it. And of course, at band camp, the wrath I got from my ex-crush triggered what? His familiar person, family member. I really don't want to give things away, so out of respect, but what that the other person did in 8th grade to me. And it just brought back onset of all these memories. And that was really it. And of course, I would see them over the years. And I remember like one time I was in a movie theater and I was with my best friend at the time. And we were going to see Bruce Almighty, with Jim Carrey. And I'm getting the popcorn. And I got this weird, like scared feeling, this fear, familiarity feeling. And you know what I'm talking about? Like if you're in a room, you're like, oh my God, there's someone here that I could sense them. And I turned around and he was there with the whole family, I should say. And I got really nervous. I'm like, I need to leave. I can't be here. And she's like, what's wrong with you? I can't be here. I'm hated by him. He said he hated me a long time ago. I assume he hates me. They all hate me. Like this was my response. My heart was going fast. I'm pacing back and forth. Again, trauma response. And I did talk to him later on. I gave him the biggest hug and he was like kind of shocked to see me. And it's like, oh, I talked to your friend. Like we're good friends now. He's like, yeah, I talk to him once in a while. I'm like, really? Yeah. And then it was like a quick hug. And then he goes through the robes and like quickly flees. And I thought, oh my God, that he really does hate me. So I went through like all these years thinking he hated me. And the thing is, we would be at certain events because of mutual friends. And I could never talk to him. And in fact, I remember in college, I got his number through another friend because of a situation I had to call him for a music thing. And when I called him, he couldn't remember who I was for a brief second, but he was studying at the time. He's like, call me back. I never called him back. Never once. Because I was scared of him. Now you're thinking, why? Dude, it's been years. Because all this was unresolved. And, I wish I would have said, hey, dude, I need to talk to you. But, I didn't. And again, life moved on. You have a family, get married, etc. But when we had reconnected, it's all I wanted to say was, hey, this affected me and move on. But it just turned out what did the sexting gate affair. But yeah, I mean, these are trauma response. Now, when the sexting gate had ended and I spoke up and said, no, the other person that caused me trauma in 8th grade cut me off like he always did. He says, I want to know. I don't want to know. And, how did you meet? I don't want to know anything. And then for 3.5 years after all this shit hit the fan, why didn't the other half call me? Remember, I said, like, he wasn't obligated. But in my mind, it would have been nice to know, hey, I'm going through this alone. Like, you don't know the full story, the full background, what happened, how it's affecting me. And you don't care. We all move on. But this was a huge, huge situation. So when I became Salty Vixen, it was for me to heal from all the shit from you both did to me many years ago. And also the fact you fucking cut me off. If you had just listened to me for the first time in your life instead of making assumptions, and that's what he did in 8th grade too, I probably would never gone into writing erotica. I probably never had let this trauma consume me the way it had. But it did. And I created a fucking amazing business out of it. And that's awesome, right? Totally awesome. Yeah, I know. They know I'm Salty Vixen. It's not a big deal. And I did not create the name out of hate. I actually created it out of the crap that happened to me, which is, yeah, this negative part of it, but I created to make love out of it, to make something positive, because you can't let hate consume you. And it was consuming me. Because again, what that guy didn't know was when the sexting gate was going on, we were using WhatsApp. He was telling me, be discreet, like he did in high school. Be discreet. Don't say anything. And after she had the fan, the guy said to me on the phone, you consent to this. You hear me? You consented to this, which I responded, not like that, dude, not like that. I said, you never once knew how I felt. I entertained you because you knew how I felt about you. I was going through a fucking divorce that was abusive. And my mental health probably wasn't there. I remember telling him this, and I'm like, you knew how I felt about you and you took advantage of this, and you weren't single. And I didn't know that. And I'm so disgusted when I think about it. Just like what you did on May 6, 1995. And I reference that to a lot. The first orgasm thing. We hugged the first orgasm. Turned out he was dating somebody. And there's a whole story. I didn't know that. Because I don't think many people knew. People told me about that years later. But there was a funny thing that happened afterwards that I don't want to disclose that because it's a long time ago. But the point is, it's like after May 6, 1995, my orgasm through a hug thing happened. He avoided me for 3.5 weeks, and I thought, oh my God, he hates me. What did I do to him? And then, of course, after 3.5 weeks, we talked again. Why do I remember that? Because I wrote it in my diary. That's why. So, yes, this was not just a little bit of trauma. This went so much deeper. And then I was being cyber-stalked by certain people for 3.5 years. And it got pretty bad in July when I see in my Instagram that person clicked on my story, and I had just made a introduction about another trauma event. I was like, I'm going to write that into my storyline to get rid of that idea, because that's how I do. When I write, I'm poking fun at events, and I make it, these fantasy stories. So when I go, dear doctor, my alpha male, my dom sir, I'm thinking about you today. Oh yes, baby. I get into the zone. Or dear first dom, yes. How are you doing today? Oh, I know you're listening. And this is just my playfulness, but that's how I deal with trauma. And I've said in the past, my writing was never going to be this long, but here I am. I'm still alone. I'm still single. It sucks. I poke fun at the dating world. However, on the bright side, I've fully healed from a lot of the stuff from sexting gate. And part of it was I had to be true to myself about it, because my feelings with him were always going to be hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And people don't understand that. It's a trauma. Like, well, he liked me, he didn't. Why the fuck did he do that to me? See, that song Tangled in Emotions I wrote, it's on my YouTube music channel. That's my emotions back and forth. Like, I like you, I don't like you. You liked me, you didn't like me. What you did was not cool, but man, I really like you because, I'm alone all the time. So I think about, like, is that normalcy what he did? He fucked with my brain. No, it's not normalcy. But unfortunately, in this dating world, people cheat. Unfortunately, it's disgusting. I know I'm going on a tangent. The point is, do I hold a grudge? No. Do I think about the dude all the time? No. Do I want to think about him? No. But when he crosses my mind, something got triggered. And lately, it's because I've been so alone. And on these dates I go on, a lot of these guys have been very creepy, and they have triggered a few things that sexting gate dude had done. So anyway, that was my whole point is, do we hold on grudges for trauma? No, but from the outside looking in, it does look like that. So yes, I brought up the past. This is the source of trauma. It's like boom, 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 boom for everything. But all leads back to 8th grade. And I don't want to think about it. But unfortunately, when triggers happen, it just takes a minute for me to come back. So I think about what the dude said to me. You need to heal, move on. So how do I heal? I think about the voice. It's almost like the voice brings me back. It's a weird thing. But from other people who experience trauma, this is a normal thing. So it's weird from the outside looking in, but it's quite normal. All right, my lovelies, I'm going to end this podcast by saying, I hope you have a lovely day. Until next time, this is Salty Vixen. Goodbye.
Come and share with me. So little corner, anything goes. Every sip tells a story, every word brings a smile. With every conversation we'll go that extra mile.